Welcome to the Fantasy Football Fanatics podcast with your hosts Griffin Palmer, CJ Hickman, Jason Cabrera, and Ryan Mitchell.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. It is Friday, June 16th. This is the Fantasy Football Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Griffin Palmer, joined over the phone by my co-analysts, CJ the Hitman Hickman and Jason Cabrera. What's up, guys?
What's going on, man?
Not too much.
Hey, Griffin.
I'm excited to be back. We're going to get to some fun conversation today and some general good feedback from the people who went out. I mean, if you're on YouTube, you didn't see this. We extended our Patreon show that we did this past week to the listener audience through iTunes and Stitcher and all of that because we got into a little bit of IDP talk and, just kind of that way to kind of show you what we do over there and, some more advanced talk because we're going to get into IDP here. But there are people who are looking for a little bit more advanced kind of conversation, get an idea of kind of what we do over there. And it was just good stuff to talk about. I had fun with it. What about you, Jason?
No, I had fun with it. Love talking IDP, and I definitely think this is both a good thing for people to kind of get their feet wet in IDP, also get an idea of what kind of conversations they're going to get over on Patreon. So, yeah, I definitely enjoyed myself.
We love IDP here. So, obviously, we can't get into it as much as we want here on the main show, but head over to Patreon, and we talk about it quite a bit. I'd say that's a good majority of the shows we've done thus far. But anyway, welcome to the show, everyone. This is the Fantasy Football Fanatics. As we mentioned before, we have an amazing show for you guys today. Today, we're going to be debating some of the merits of various contrary fantasy football strategies. We see a lot circling all around the internet, people who are taking stances this way or that way, and we'll see, how realistic they are. So that should be fun. Of course, we're going to bring you all the top headlines from around the league, everything of that nature. As always, please make sure you guys subscribe to the show on any media source that you're listening to us right now, iTunes, Stitcher, Podcast Addict. If you're watching, well, I'm just sitting here by myself. If you're watching me on YouTube, hello. Subscribe. We're a year-round show. We're here every Tuesday and Friday through the off-season, through the main season as well, bringing you all the waiver wire ads, your starts and sits, all of that throughout the season. Easiest way to reach the show or submit your questions, follow us on Twitter at the FF Fanatics. Get the most up-to-date breaking information over there. You can join the community on Facebook at facebook.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. You can email your questions to thefantasyfootballfanatics@gmail.com. Wow, as I stutter, thefantasyfootballfanatics@gmail.com. Want to make sure we get that right. We have the website, thefantasyfootballfanatics.com. Just lots of good stuff. And if you do want to get involved with the Patreon show, you don't have to really submit much of anything. It's at the minimum level. You get access to the bonus podcast every week, a lot of cool exclusive perks. Obviously, the much more advanced, in-depth topics. That is exclusive on Patreon, generally exclusive, I should say, at patreon.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. And of course, the big news, we've been getting a lot of feedback on this so far. Our Listener League iTunes Review Challenge is going on right now. Again, if you want to join us in a 2017 Fantasy Football League, you can play against me, you can play against Jason, you can play against CJ. All you have to do is subscribe to the show on iTunes, give us a rating, give us a review, and then we will randomly select the winners when it comes around the beginning of August. And again, at the end of your review, you can leave us an email or a Twitter handle so we can reach you to let you know that you won. And you can reach us, again, at the FF Fanatics, thefantasyfootballfanatics@gmail.com. You can send us what you want to see. We've had some people who have responded by saying, well, I reviewed on Stitcher. Does that count? Well, we greatly appreciate that. And, I mean, we can take that into consideration, but based on agreements and everything that we're doing right now, we're focused completely on iTunes, so I know that's not convenient for everybody, but it's not that hard to do. Just head over to iTunes, do exactly what you did on Stitcher on iTunes, and then you're in the running. So that's all there is to it. But enough bookkeeping, let's move on to the show. We're going to start with our warm-up question of the day, and that is simply, who is one player that will not be on your fantasy teams this season? I'm going to throw this one to you guys, because I've been talking way too much already.
Blake Bortles.
Would you like to explain why?
I don't believe in him. He's not a good quarterback to me. And this whole narrative thing that, he was injured and the system was not up to him and his shoulder, that all stuff is garbage. I think what he's proved that what he was a fluke year the year before, and he is a handcuff to that team, and not a good handcuff. He's a bad cancer, basically. So until I see better, I don't want nothing to do with him.
All right. Jason?
Man, that's cancer. That's rough.
I know, that's rough.
Yeah, it's like, good grief.
I'll take it.
It's a hard one for me. I mean, I have a lot of hate in my heart.
Wow.
What?
I know.
You got a lot of hate in your heart?
I'm just saying.
You don't believe in
CJ has
Cam
a lot of.
Why don't you guys
CJ
hate
has
it?
a lot of hate.
He does.
me?
CJ has a lot of hate in his heart.
CJ does.
Well, I have a lot of dislike to bad quarterback and just bad play in general. So I have a lot of dislike.
I'm just
to that.
saying,
Like,
Blake Bortles is basically free right now. You can get him in the 4th round. He's finished as a quarterback 1 each of the last 2 years. That's all I'm saying.
no, I don't want to. But that's a lot of frustration you got to deal with that guy because a guy in our YouTube channel, he was commenting and mentioned that's a lot of garbage time play you're getting at that dude. And listen, I like to enjoy football, and especially as somebody that I draft and I'm taking interest in. I don't want to see this dude just sucking it up for 3 quarters, and then the 4th quarter comes, and then he's barely making double-digit points. Like that annoys me. I don't want nothing to do with that.
I mean, I get your point.
I get it. I understand.
I'm just saying he's been a quarterback 1 for 2 years in a row. That's all I'm saying. Go ahead, Jason.
Saying he sucks.
Hey, and this comes down to it. Don't play with players you don't like, because as Griffin very succinctly put it a couple of shows ago, the worst thing in the world is to lose with players you hate.
Yeah.
So definitely pick players you like. Even if everyone in the world tells you Blake Bortles is going to be great, and you don't like him, don't take him.
We're here to have fun.
For me, exactly. For me, oh man, just because I think I've got him rated so low, and he continues to drop, honestly, in my rankings. But because I've got him rated so low, and I think people are going to take him early, Keenan Allen. I don't think Keenan Allen's going to be on my team. I don't believe in him. He hasn't shown me anything yet. He gets hurt too much, and there's just too much going on. And that Chargers offense is looking beastly. I mean, they got a bunch of weapons there, and that really doesn't help the situation. I think that's going to pull some of his production away. So I highly doubt that Keenan Allen will end up on any of my teams this year.
He is.
I thought you were going to go Cam Newton there. I'm sorry.
If it comes down to it, and I got no other choice, I can take a Cam Newton, because Cam Newton will finish, at least in the top half of quarterbacks. I know that. I'm going to take Cam Newton before I take a Tom Savage. You know what I mean?
All right.
Yeah. Well, Keenan Allen's currently going as the 3rd pick in the 4th round, which I still feel like is probably a little bit high. But at least it's not like in our most recent mock draft where he went as the 12th overall pick. Good Lord.
He was in the 1st round. Oh, like, that is craziness.
That was ridiculous. I have a couple people I could choose for this answer.
What?
You said player, not players.
I know.
You know what? That's one thing I don't like about you. You put rules on us. But yet you continue to just go out there and you just do whatever you freaking want to twiddle your thumbs.
CJ, right? If you would let me finish.
Why don't you put players so we can be able to do the same thing?
CJ, if you would let me finish my statement, I was going to say there are a number of players that I could pick for this, but there's one in particular that stands out to me. That's where I was going, CJ.
Be quick with your words, guy. Be quick.
He wasn't going to say that.
I was being quick with my words. And mine is so perfectly Brandon Cooks. He will not be on any of my teams this year for a number of reasons. One,
troll you.
No, not a troll. One, I don't believe in him. 2, he's going way too high. 3, Julian Edelman just re-signed, so clearly he's in their long-term plans. There was a lot of stipulation that maybe Brandon Cooks is kind of becoming that new main guy. They're phasing out Julian Edelman. They might cut him because he's on his last year of his contract, whatever the case may be. But the team just made an $11 million commitment to Julian Edelman, so that tells me he's going to be around for a while. So I'm not buying into Brandon Cooks. Now, to be fair, his projection has gone up and down his average draft position. He is now back in the 3rd round. It's the 1st pick in the 3rd. So I mean, that's still too high for me. I'm not investing a boom bust player with a 3rd round pick. What are you gonna say, CJ?
They gave him a that a boy contract. How are you gonna tell me that you trying to feed our listeners that they're not going to give Brandon Cooks the looks that he's going to get because he's that talented, just because they gave a that boy contract to Julian Edelman? Come on, man.
If Brandon Cooks falls more into the 4th round, I'll consider it, but I'm not spending a late second, early 3rd round pick on Brandon Cooks. It's not going to happen. I can tell you that right now. He's going to be way too inconsistent for me. So, again, that's a guy who's not going to be on my team. Haha, hey, well, one person, my guy, so shut up. Hey, moving on. We're going to move into our top headlines from around the league. Now, we're going to start with the quarterback position with Andrew Luck, who will not be throwing during OTAs. Still recovering from the shoulder surgery on his throwing arm. He's also reportedly not going to throw in minicamps, not expected to be throwing until we get to training camp. So, guys, any concern here with Andrew Luck?
No, I just want to. This is the dark ages we're about to get into, correct?
We've been in the dark ages. It's dark ages until the end of July when we get into training camp.
Well, this is official because all mini camp and stuff is done. So this is official dark ages.
Yeah. From this point on, maybe a couple of mini camps, but there's nothing going on between now and training camp.
I just want the fans and the listeners to know that you underline dark ages and then put my name beside it. I think that's incredibly racist by you. I don't like that. We need to correct that. Okay.
It literally doesn't say dark ages anywhere on the show documents. So thank you for
seeing
trying.
I'm seeing it on my page. You did something.
CJ, are you looking at the right show document?
You had it on another show document.
Oh, jeez. Okay, so CJ's starting to start trouble on a show where nothing. So back to Andrew Luck. Does this concern you guys at all?
No, not at all.
No.
Yeah,
no. There's a lot of time left.
Yeah, he still has a couple months to recover. We know he knows the offense. He's established as one of the best throwers in the league. My only concern is not really with him, but maybe with his timing with obviously the wide receivers there. And the big thing, though, I'll change my tune, though, if we get like 2-3 weeks into training camp and he's still not throwing. Obviously, then you're going to have to start waving that red flag. There's a lot of problems. Yeah. But as of right now, I'm not freaking out about it. They're trying to be safe. He's the franchise quarterback. He's coming back from injury. They know what they have in him. I'm not stressing about it. Let's see. According to ESPN, Philadelphia Eagles reporter Tim McManus, Carson Wentz has struggled with, quote, bouts of inaccuracy during OTAs. So does this give you guys concern? CJ, as we'll talk about fantasy here, but being the Eagles fan, I'm sure we'll get a little bit off topic. What are your thoughts here, CJ?
No, fantasy-wise, this is a guy that you're probably going to pick up late anyway, so like double-digit rounds. So, he's a guy, you look at his schedule, they have a favorable schedule. He's got good weapons. So, this stuff that I've seen both reports. I've seen this side, plus I've seen other reports saying that he's been looking great on 7-on-7 drills, and, he's looking great on 11-on-11, all this stuff. So, either way, he's a guy that you're going to pick up late anyway, so I don't know how much stock you put into this where it scares you off of him.
He's currently going in the back of the 11th round right now as the 18th quarterback off the board. Jeez, who's drafting this many? How are 24 quarterbacks going in 15 or in 12-man leagues in 15 rounds? That's crazy to me.
2 per team?
I know, that's dumb.
That's math, Griffin, math.
Thank you. I understand basic math, but what I'm saying is that's dumb. I don't draft that way, but that's me.
Well, that's you.
Yeah, so this is a guy I wasn't drafting anyway, because until he can show me that they can get the touchdown total up, which I expect to go up this year with the addition of weapons, but I'm not investing heavily into Carson Wentz this season. I have to see it first, because though we saw flashes in his rookie year, as a whole, that offense seemed to struggle. Jason, you have any thoughts?
That's reasonable, though.
Yeah.
Hey, this is his second year. You know what I mean? Everybody needs to calm down. He played very well last year, and bouts of inaccuracy in the OTAs. Oh no, who cares? We'll see how it goes. He's got new weapons that he's trying to get on track with. So I say just chill out. Wait till we see what happens in preseason.
Yep. All right, let's move on to the running back position where Dallas Cowboys running back coach Gary Brown has said that Ezekiel Elliott will, quote, absolutely be more involved in the passing game this season. I think that this is obvious and inevitable, especially with the way that the team I'm expecting to have to play from behind a bit more and the way to keep Ezekiel Elliott on the field. Though this is great news because the one thing that really separated him from David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, was the fact that both of those guys were much more heavily involved in the passing game, which is why, especially in PPR leagues, they are leagues ahead of Ezekiel Elliott. Though we all know he has good receiving skills. He just wasn't asked to do a lot of that last year. Does this change him in your standings at all, or were you guys kind of anticipating this as well? Because I was.
I was anticipating it for me personally.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, in fact, in my projections, I have his rushing yardage going down, but his passing yardage going considerably up. So, not surprised. That's what I was expecting. Various outlets and sources, including Monday Morning quarterbacks Albert Breer, are reporting that Joe Mixon looks, quote, like a beast in practice. So, guys, how excited are you about Joe Mixon? Because all I'm hearing out of camp is that he's looking really good and looking like he's really starting to grasp a hold of the NFL level and potentially of that starting role.
I'm very excited about. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go.
I'm very excited about Joe Mixon. I see him as an eventual Le'Veon Bell type. Someone that's going to get a lot of touches. He's going to be involved in the passing game. He's going to be involved in pretty much all aspects of that offense. He's probably the best pure running back to come out of the draft. The only reason I'm hesitant to throw him up into the top 10 on my rankings is because he's a rookie. It's going to take him a little bit of time to get under him, his feet under him, and he's not technically the starter yet. So those are the only things that worry me, but I very well think he could win the starting job during the offseason, and if he does, you should definitely push him up your rankings.
Well, this is a guy that we saw this happening. We projected this. We saw it. The talent was there. It was just the off the field issue. So, this is a place that where he went to with the Bengals. I mean, they have a history of giving second chances to these players like this. So I already knew he was going to be that guy. Only person I saw that might give him, a running of a challenge is Giovanni Bernard. If Giovanni Bernard, he's still that guy that can do both as far as running the ball and catching. But Mixon is a different type of animal. He's a different type of beast. So I do see him, getting more of the reps and the touches because Jeremy Hill, he's not a thing. You don't have to worry about him at all. He's totally replaced. And Joe Mixon is just going to go out there and he's going to beast. He's going to beast mode and get you some good points this year.
Now, Joe Mixon currently, as of today, is going as the 9th pick in the 4th round, which I think is a steal for him. Some players going immediately around him are players like Eddie Lacy, Doug Martin, C.J. Anderson, Ty Montgomery, LeGarrette Blount. I feel pretty confident saying that if we still keep the news keeps coming the way it has been, I might take Joe Mixon ahead of all of those guys. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Oh, yeah.
I see no reason.
I would agree with that.
I think we all think that he could be that Le'Veon Bell type talent and David Johnson type production. So, as a borderline late 4th, early 5th round pick, sign me up. I'm all on board for Joe Mixon. Yeah, also with that news, I lost my spot. Giovanni Bernard, according to Bengals.com, Jeff Hobson, I think is how he said it, he has suggested that Cincinnati running back Giovanni Bernard might be held out of, quote, the first couple of regular season games, end quote, due to his ACL injury. A lot of reports suggesting that he's coming back a little bit slow and he's not quite ready. He hasn't been participating. If he's held out for the first couple of games, because this is what we kind of thought the situation was going to be, that it was going to be Joe Mixon, it was going to be Giovanni Bernard, and Jeremy Hill was going to fall by the wayside, because Giovanni Bernard's more of a complementary piece, where Jeremy Hill, Joe Mixon does what Jeremy Hill does, only a lot better. So It seems more like if this is the case, I'm even higher on Joe Mixon because I think Joe Mixon will therefore be a bell cow and Jeremy Hill will come in to spell him as opposed to a change of pace type back.
Absolutely.
So this is something to definitely monitor. Talk about shooting up boards.
Probably would be be concerned about is, if Mixon does all the good work and gets into the red zone, they might get Jeremy Hill in there, and then he get the Voltron. That's one thing we do not want.
It's a concern, but honestly, I'm not that worried about it because Joe Mixon is also very good in the red zone. They have very similar builds, so I don't know what they think they'd be getting out of Jeremy Hill over Joe Mixon, but besides his experience down there, of course. I don't know. I'm really curious when we get into auction stuff. I want to know where Joe Mixon is kind of going in auctions because this guy could be a serious steal in auction leagues. But we have to move on. We'll get into that down the road. So sources are saying that Chicago Bears running back Jordan Howard expects a larger role in the passing game this season. Yet again, I say duh. This guy, he had a ton of carries this past season. He was the second leading rusher in the league, but again, receiving yards, receptions as a whole, that was kind of a down for him in the stats. So what do you guys think the ceiling is for Jordan Howard if he does get a sizable increase in the passing game?
I love it. I mean, I see this guy as definitely taking a step forward this year. I mean, this last year we didn't know what to expect from him, and he was amazing. Also with a unproven quarterback, regardless of which one takes the helm, getting him more involved in that offense, that's going to be awesome. I would definitely push him up my rankings if that proves to be the case.
Well, I saw him doing his thing this year and had him doing a lot of good things in fantasy football because I got him finishing top 5 in fantasy when it comes to running back. So I did see this happening. Just being an outside looking in and just being getting the lay of the land as far as what's going on in Chicago. You got 2 quarterbacks, one rookie, and then another guy that they're not too sold on. And Mike Glennon, wide receivers are still unproven. So the only consistent thing that's there, that's reliable, so that you can look forward to is Jordan Howard. So I do see him being great and getting both the carries, plus being productive in the running game, plus the passing.
Yeah, Jordan Howard I currently have as my RB8, and I might be, I'm in the process of restatting him with this news. I haven't finished doing it yet, but it's looking like he might move up a spot. So, I mean, I am very high on him. My big concern, obviously, and we talked about this if you go back and listen to our running back rankings show, was I expect the Bears to be playing from behind a lot this season.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
they have a plethora of wide receivers, so I figured they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. I mean, obviously, we just finished talking about how Jordan Howard was not incredibly featured in the passing game. He had 29 receptions last year for 298 yards and 1 touchdown. So he was averaging about 10 yards a catch. He had 50 targets, so somewhat involved, higher than a good number of running backs who finish in the top 24 as your top tiers, 2 tiers of running back. But I mean, you're looking at players like David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, who had 120 and 94 targets, respectively. So I mean, if he can get up to that threshold, I am much more comfortable with Jordan Howard going into the season. As of right now, I'm still tentative, but if he really does, and he showed some good pass catching ability, but if he's able to really keep going and down that line, I'll be much higher on him.
Agreed.
Why am I blanking on Jeremy Langford? He's much more of the pass catching back, so that's kind of my hesitation here on necessarily if I'm buying that this will happen. But I believe they don't want to be changing formations and giving away their hand as much, so I could see it. So we'll see. It's training camp. Well, obviously, we'll know a lot more as well, not even training camp. It's OTAs. We'll know more through training camp, through preseason, and then obviously into the season itself. So let's move on. Baltimore Ravens quarterback Joe Flacco has said that Danny Woodhead is bringing an element to the Ravens offense that they have been missing since the departure of Ray Rice. So I could totally see that. I mean, what have we really had since Ray Rice? Not a lot. So, I mean, we used Kyle Juszczyk a lot in this kind of multi-pass catching role, but he was a fullback. He's not a running back. We saw flashes with Buck Allen and then Kenneth Dixon last year. And Terrence West, he can catch the ball. He's more of a north-south runner. He's not overly talented in the passing game. We've been missing that big play guy. And Danny Woodhead, this is what he excels at. And he can also run between the tackles. So I could totally see this, Danny Woodhead. And I expect him to be used in a lot of creative ways as well. I expect him to be split out wide from time to time, 2 running back sets. So I'm excited to see how they use him. The question is, what's the quantity going to be? Because the quantity is going to be really dependent on whether he's draftable or not for fantasy purposes. And even as the resident Ravens fan here on the show, I honestly have no idea right now what the workload's going to be. So another situation to monitor for sure. In Washington, the Washington Redskins running back Matt Jones' agent has asked for the team to release him. So this is not surprising. They drafted Samaje Perine. They've got Fat Rob there ahead of him. Matt Jones, I think they believe that he has an opportunity to be used on another team, but he's under contract. Do you think he gets released? I doubt it. I think they're going to hold on to him for depth.
No. Yeah.
I think he's gone, man.
What?
I don't think they'll release.
Ha! This is great. CJ, talk.
I think Matt Jones is gone. I think the writing is on the wall. They try to give him in there and do something. Man, he was fumbling the ball. It was his weight. He was being consistent. So I think the writing's on the wall and he's getting out of there.
Jason.
I think he's gone too, but I don't think they're just going to release him. I think they'll try to get something for him first.
I don't think they're going to get much for him, though. He was, obviously
they won't.
surpassed by...
No, they won't.
I think he's going to end up getting cut, but I think they'll try. All right, so let's move on. Also, final bit of running back news. The Indianapolis Colts have placed running back Christine Michaels on injured reserve. So he's been bouncing around the league, and now he's on IR.
What the heck?
The injury has not been, as of this recording, released. So don't really know what happened there. I guess we'll report when we know more. Not really a big loss. He was probably 4th on the depth chart. So let's move on to some wide receiver news. Unrestricted free agent wide receiver Eric Decker visited with the Tennessee Titans so far this week. The leading candidates, good Lord, per various sources, are currently suggesting that Baltimore and Tennessee are the leading candidates, though it seems that Eric Decker is planning to or looking to visit with a few other teams before he makes a decision. So, guys, where do you guys think Eric Decker's going to end up? There's been links to teams that were looking at Jeremy Maclin, obviously Buffalo, obviously Tennessee, Baltimore, Arizona, Cleveland are a lot of the things that I'm hearing, but it seems like the leading candidates, as we mentioned, are currently Baltimore and Tennessee.
I think I think the best fit for him would be Baltimore. I mean, you got a quarterback there. I think it's just too crowded for him if he goes to Tennessee. There's too many young talent there. Plus, the addition of Corey Davis there. I mean, I think he's going to be something. You got Rashad Jennings already. You got who's the guy that allegedly punched out that fan? I'm trying to remember his name. What was that? Taywan Taylor?
No, Tajay Sharp.
Tajay Sharp. I'm sorry. Then you got the smash mouth running game. So it's too crowded there. I think Ravens would be a better fit. He could work in there, be there. Well, I mean, that means your boy Mike Wallace might be going to the slot if he goes there, man. I mean, so I think that's the best place for him to go would be the Ravens. And fantasy wise, I think he would be good there too.
I could see that.
I had said that before that I thought Baltimore was the best fit for Decker. I still think that's true. You guys need that dimension in your offense, and he brings that plus a lot of experience. So I could definitely see him landing in Baltimore.
Yeah, I think he'd be the replacement for that Anquan Bolden, Derek Mason, Steve Smith role, that possession receiver.
Right.
Though obviously a bigger target, more of a red zone presence. Now we use our tight ends in that way a lot, and we've got some, obviously 3 speedy guys now: Jeremy Maclin, Mike Wallace, and Brashad Perriman. We don't know what we have in Brashad. Jeremy Maclin and I think Mike Wallace are kind of both 1A, 1B right now. I don't think either one of them is the true elite number one. They both are speedy guys. They each do different things better. But I think Eric Decker would be yet another one of those he'd be 1C in that offense, but they all have a different role, and that'll allow us to do a lot of very interesting formations, a lot of different roles. I like that a lot. If not there, I mean, I know that you're not very high on this, but there is quite a bit of chatter coming out of Arizona as a potential suitor. They're looking for a bigger downfield receiver. Nope. I know, nope.
Could work.
That's all Jason says is nope. I also do like Buffalo because with Zay Jones going down, he'd jump right into a starting role next to Sammy Watkins. So he could be getting a lot of targets there. The quality of targets yet to be determined. We don't know what the offensive system is going to really be with the change of coach and coordinator. But it'll be interesting to see where he lands. But I mean, again, the leading candidates: Tennessee, Baltimore, and I'm not just as a Ravens fan. I look at the offense and the quality of quarterback. People can make a big case for Marcus Mariota, but he has yet to put together a full season, and that scares me. He's young. There's a lot of mouths to feed. And you forgot to mention Delaney Walker, who's also still there breathing, catching targets, and he would be doing exactly what Eric Decker's doing. So I think he'd have more of a role in Baltimore, but we'll see. We're spending too much time. But speaking of Jeremy Maclin, also we wanted to mention that news have come out, the contract details, which we told you was a 2-year contract. It's reportedly worth somewhere around $11 million. So that's quite the investment. That's more than I thought we were going to be able to afford to give out to one player based on our current cap situation. So we'll see what happens. Let's move on. The Los Angeles Rams head coach Sean McVay has said that Tavon Austin is, quote, going to be a big part of our offense, end quote. Shocking.
So
yeah. This isn't even news. I mean, you're paying him a ton of money to be that guy, and he's not really an elite receiver, but he's a Swiss Army knife, so of course he's going to be a big part of your offense. You have to justify that. So, no surprise there. I'm not moving Tavon Austin up or down in my rankings based on this, because I really have to see the offense first, and obviously how Jared Goff is doing before I make any type of investment in Tavon Austin.
Oh, yeah.
Probably not going to happen. I don't even know where he's going right now. I'd have to look it up. Let's move on, though.
And he's in the best shape of his life.
Yes. Yay, off-season talk. Let's see. According to the Chicago Tribune, wide receiver Kevin White is back to full speed. Now,
and he's in the best shape of his life.
Thank you, Jason. The most common off-season narrative. Now, I put this in here because this is confusing me because per other sources, he might be having to get surgery on his damaged thumbs, so I don't know how it could be both. So I want to put this in here more than anything to show you that you need to really check and recheck your sources and what's going on, because this is coming from the Chicago Tribune. It's a pretty big newspaper, and I don't know, honestly, because I haven't been able to verify this. But, I mean, most recently I heard they were debating whether or not he was going to need surgery. So I doubt it, but, I mean, maybe he's good to go. That report was a couple days old, and this is much more recent. So we'll obviously look into this and get back to you down the line. Let's move on. Reports out of Philadelphia are that the third-year wide receiver Nelson Aguilar spent most of OTAs running out of the slot. Now, this is very confusing to me because he was always an outside kind of guy, and that's what you have Jordan Matthews for. So, CJ, shine a little bit of light on this situation to us.
Well, Nelson Aguilar, I was talking to you guys about this earlier today. Look, he's been having some good reports out of camp. If you're a Philly fan and you've been watching what's been going on there, he was highly drafted a couple years ago, man, and he is yet to show, the full potential. I mean, he was supposed to be a Chip Kelly prodigy, a high project that was supposed to be like the next up and coming, whoever you want to throw out there. He was supposed to be that guy. He's yet to show it. He's been underdeveloping a lot and overwhelming a lot because he just hasn't. He looks like he cracks under pressure. So for fantasy wise, once again, this is a guy that you're not even gonna look at until late rounds, if that's the case. He's been showing out and OTAs, playing in the slot. So I mean, it's been good from what I've seen in practice, but I want to know what he's gonna do with the pads on. So until that's a case, until that happens, I just stay away from him, man. Don't believe this.
It's just very confusing to me because obviously you have Torrey Smith doing the deep stuff. You've got Alshon Jeffrey doing short to intermediate. You've got Jordan Matthews doing the short stuff, primarily out of the slot. You have Zach Ertz, who can do a lot of short to intermediate. So, I mean, are they just trying to find a spot to plug in Nelson Aguilar, who they invested a first-round pick into, or are they just, out of ideas and trying stuff out right now? I honestly don't know. It's intriguing, for sure. Let's move on. Go ahead.
So I was just going to say this kind of reeks of what they did in Pittsburgh when they moved Hines Ward over to the slot after a career being outside, and they did the same thing when Arians came to Arizona. They moved Fitzgerald to the slot. The problem is with Aguilar, he doesn't have the weight. I mean, he's 198 pounds at 6 feet tall. That's a thin dude. I can't see him, trying to go to the middle and catch passes down the middle in the slot. I'm afraid for his life.
I mean, those smaller, shifty guys with good agility, they tend to do well in the slot. But yeah, I think he's one good hit away from being in trouble. So
just getting snapped.
Yeah, we'll see. Again, we're trying to sift through all the off-season talk and the fluff that's going around the league to give you guys the relevant news. This just kind of caught our eye because it's very intriguing because it's not something I had expected. I expected he was going to be used in two deep formations with Torrey Smith a lot, and whether he's going to be able to catch the ball or not in the new offense. Well, not in the new offense, but in his second year in this offense remains to be seen. But we'll know more. Obviously, training camp. We just have a ways to go before we get there. Last bit of wide receiver news. New York Jets third-round rookie wide receiver Ardarius Stewart recently underwent surgeries on both his thumb and his groin. Now, reports are that he's expected to be back for training camp. I don't know. But, I mean, so that's not what you want to hear when you've invested a third-round pick in a wide receiver. That team is just falling apart. I mean, I don't know how much narrative there is here. He's expected to be back, but it's something to keep your eye on if you were high on this guy. Obviously, maybe disciplinary actions coming down to a couple of the guys ahead of him might be getting a good workload. But again, who's throwing him the ball? What's that offense going to be doing? They are scamming for Sam like bosses right now. So let's move on to the tight end position, where Matt Ryan has said that second-year tight end Austin Hooper has improved, quote, exponentially this offseason. So I was actually pretty high on
Austin. He's in the best shape of his life.
And he's in the best shape of his life. Now, Austin Hooper was a guy who I was very high on last year, but not necessarily, again, rookie tight ends generally don't do anything. That's why I was not preaching to go out and get him and draft him. There was a couple weeks where I recommended streaming him, and he did actually very well those weeks, but as a whole, rookie tight end. It is what it is. Now going to his second year, that third year. That third year is obviously where you usually see the big jump, but really talented guys, that second year. Plus, there's no ahead of him now. He is the starting tight end. So I think he is in a perfect position, primed to really have a very good second year. This is good news coming out. Of course, this is off-season news. Everyone's saying that everyone is looking the best they ever have. They look like what, Jason?
Best shape of their lives.
Thank you for not letting me down there. So, again, this is news, and it's important because it's a guy who you might be able to get super late in your drafts. just something to keep an eye on because we all saw what Matt Ryan and Tony Gonzalez did years ago. The tight end position in Atlanta has been known to be productive. Let's move on to some other news where Cleveland rookie defensive end and number 1 overall pick Myles Garrett missed the final day of OTAs due to a foot injury. He limped off the field. The severity is still being examined, and he is currently undergoing various tests to see the extent of the injury. Again, this injury happened on Wednesday. So, guys, what are your thoughts on this? This is obviously not good news.
Sucks. That sucks, man. Foot injuries linger. Those suckers linger. That is not good.
They do. Go ahead.
I was like, that guy needs to get in the cold tub and do some foot therapy, man, because that's gonna suck.
Indeed. So the concern, of course, is the extent of the injury. That he did have a foot/ankle injury previously, and if he has re-aggravated that, it could be something that, like Jason suggested, will probably linger. So we'll update as we know more. Obviously, this is more of an impact to IDP leagues, but important information to an important player who is probably being drafted relatively high if you're going to start doing your rankings for IDP. So just putting that out there, something to keep an eye on. Let's move on, though, to our topic of the day. How are we doing on time? Oh, man, that was a lot of news. All right, so we're getting to our Contrarian Fantasy Strategies. Now, the whole purpose of what we're doing here is, that if you look throughout the webs, on the message boards, wherever you look, there are people who are constantly, they're suggesting, they're standing by, they're stamping their foots, they are preaching various things you should be doing for fantasy. They could be draft strategies, playing strategies, whatever the case may be. And we thought it'd be kind of fun because obviously as a show, we have some difference of opinions, but as a whole, we generally agree on, the right ways to do certain things. Now, we thought it'd be kind of fun to go into some of these strategies, talk about the merits of them, try and make a case for them and see really at the end of it whether we're buying it or not. So, does anyone really itching to go first here?
Well, I think you should go first, man. You got
definitely think you should go first.
Textbooks on your stuff.
Oh, excuse me for being prepared. All right, well then I will start with, and this is something that I've been hearing a little bit of overkill. We'll see how much better mine is than yours, CJ. How about that? We'll start with, this is something I've been hearing quite a bit lately, and people that are making a case for the advantages to taking a wide receiver instead of a running back with a top 3 pick. Now, of course, initially you hear that and you're like, get out of here. Why would I do that? But there's some interesting points to it. Their point is mainly what's left at the, when you're in for a long snake before it gets back to you. Generally, if you're in a 12-team league, if you're picking second or third, you're waiting, about 20 picks before you pick again. So a lot of the top-tier elite wide receivers are gone, but because a lot of wide receivers are still going more jumbled in the first than there are running backs. It's pretty even in the first round. In the second round, seems to be more of a run of wide receivers. So say you take an elite running back with your first pick, and then it comes back to you. A lot of the guys you're generally looking for, and some of these guys would still have to fall to you for them to be there, are players like Amari Cooper, Brandon Cooks, DeAndre Hopkins, Doug Baldwin. Not the sexiest group of wide receivers. Obviously, one of those guys I talked about before, I don't want, especially not in the second round. So, question marks on a lot of these guys. Some of them, better than others. But it's not what you want as your number 1 wide receiver in a lot of cases. Some of these guys, yes, others not so much. The counter argument to that is if you take someone like, obviously we all agree that the consensus number 1 wide receiver is Antonio Brown. So let's say you take Antonio Brown, one of those top tier picks. By the time that snake gets back to you, a lot of the running backs that are generally still available to you are players like Marshawn Lynch, Leonard Fournette, Lamar Miller, Isaiah Crowell, who we are very high on as a show. And then they're saying, well, when you have that elite wide receiver, there's a lot of depth at wide receiver that you can then double up at running back, and then with your next few picks, fill out your wide receiver core, get yourself a higher tier get some 2 really good running backs. You have an elite wide receiver, and since there's so much depth at wide receiver, you can then fill up in the later rounds with backup wide receivers because obviously there's a lot more of them on the field at one time than running backs. More production from the position. Running back is more volatile. So I get all of this, and it makes a lot of sense. And if you break down the numbers from last year, it actually works out to being a very sound strategy with how guys finish if you were to add up the numbers. So all this being said, does this sway your opinion in any way, shape, or form? Because it was kind of eye-opening to me, to be honest.
Nope, not at all. Because first off, wide receivers are just as volatile as running backs, in my opinion. There are a lot of decent wide receivers out there that can give you week 1 winning performances. And bottom line for me, you take the best available player. And if I'm in the top 3, if I'm drafting in the top 3, the way I have it statted out, I'm taking one of those top 3 running backs. Those guys are going to get you more points. And, and take it from me, I won a league on the back of a fantastic running back last year, basically. He was my offense for several games. He was the only one that did anything for me, and he still won me the league. So you take the best available player, you take the best running back available, and then you worry about, okay, now I'm going to worry about my strategy. But in that top three, you take the best, in my opinion.
I mean, you weren't here, Jason, but of course, as you know, one of the main theories last year was top three was wide receiver. You went Antonio Brown, Odell Beckham Jr., Julio Jones. That was the wide accepted strategy for fantasy last year. So Antonio Brown, that's not a crazy thought. He's going in the top 4, top 5 guaranteed in all leagues now.
And you know what? And that's how I've got it statted out. But if you have it statted out, if you look at your rankings, and Antonio Brown is, let's say, over Ezekiel Elliott, you got David Johnson as number 1, you got Le'Veon Bell as number 2, and let's say you've got Antonio Brown statted out number 3. You've got a chance at Antonio Brown and Ezekiel Elliott, and the prevailing theory this year is going to be, you need to take a running back. Well, you know what? If you like Antonio Brown better, absolutely, go get him. Go get Antonio Brown. But trust your draft board. Don't buy into these draft strategies and lock into that draft strategy. You have to be flexible, because let's say David Johnson inexplicably drops 3 spots and you've got a shot at it. Are you going to take him, or are you going to take Antonio Brown? You're going to take David Johnson. You'd be ridiculous not to take David Johnson there.
You're right, CJ.
I agree with both points. I definitely agree with Jason's ring. I think when you go draft strategies, man, I think it's kind of a cop-out. I think it's a cop-out. You're not actually doing work yourself. This is your team. Yeah. Don't let somebody else think for you when it comes to that. We're here to give you guys advice from all different point of views. But at the end of the day, guess what? That's your team. Because I don't want to hear nothing about it from you. Talking about, hey, man, you screwed me out of this because you told me to do this. Oh, no.
True story.
CJ gave you his opinion. He gave me his opinion. I'm not telling you to go do something outside of,
this is how you will win.
Don't make Eli Manning your quarterback. I'll tell you that right now. That's something you don't want to do. Or Blake Bortles. You don't want to do those things.
I might do either one of those.
Yeah, yeah. And then from Griffin's point, I do see that, if you went option B, when you were talking about, taking an elite wide receiver and then come back and get those running backs, I'm totally fine with, at least 3 of those guys. Marshawn Lynch or
you'd be happy to have that running back core. That would be a good core.
That's nice. I would even love that core right there. So I can see both sides. Me personally, I definitely agree when it comes to that first pick and really the rest of my draft. I go, Jason's approach. Best player available. Who do I like? Who do I have in my rankings that I want to build my team around? If it's a beast of a running back, if I can get Zeke. If I can get Le'Veon or if I can get David Johnson, I'm picking one of those. Those 2 guys are gone. Then I'm going wide receiver. Who are my wide receivers that are beasts that I want? So that's the way I look at it, and that's just my 2 cents.
Now, so you're both saying running back if you have a top 3 pick. You're going one of those elite 3. Now,
if I can, absolutely.
So what if we're talking full point PPR here, where obviously a lot more points to the wide receiver, per reception. For me, the way I have Antonio Brown statted out right now, that gives him about 120 point increase. So does that sway you at all?
Once again, it depends because, just like say if the Cardinals have another year like they did last year, right? Who was their leading receiver when it comes to they were always getting touches, stay getting looks? And that's David Johnson. Larry Fitzgerald did lead their team in reception, but David Johnson was a beast when it comes to being a dual threat back. So that if I can get that, and then you got another argument you can make for Ezekiel Elliott. You see, if you listen to this coach talk and you really believe in this, Zeke is going to have another big part of this offense and be even better this year because he's going to get more receptions. So I agree with you. I can go receiver. But when I look at these 2 rising stars, and then I'm not even going to disrespect Le'Veon Bell, you got him there, being the Steelers, him and Big Ben's relationship. You can make an argument for both that they're going to get touches regardless.
Jason, is the PPR sway you?
And Griffin mentioned earlier in another show that Le'Veon Bell was statted out to actually get more receptions than David Johnson, who was the number 2 receiver in his offense. So I agree. You have to be you have to be able to be flexible. That's the bottom line. You have to get yourself a board and draft by the board. Don't buy into some weird tactic, instead of just statting out your board. You can stat out your board for PPR, and then pick the best available player. Again, if you think that Antonio Brown is the best available player, yeah, go ahead and get it. But don't do it just because he's a receiver, and this is the tactic I'm following.
Yeah, Le'Veon Bell had 75 receptions in 12 games. David Johnson had 80 receptions in all 16 games. So, yeah, there you go. So the full point PPR doesn't necessarily sway you, but it makes it a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, sure.
Now, to the point
of my rankings.
Oh, there you go. Now, to the point of this philosophy, and I've been playing devil's advocate here because I'm with you guys. I would still go one of those elite running backs. And a lot of that has to do with position scarcity. That elite tier of running back is just so far and above a way better than the next tier of running back that, to me, that's just too much to overcome. And I have faith in what I can get later on and just building a wide receiver core with my draft strategy, which, of course, we've gotten into a lot in the past, and I'm sure we'll talk more in depth on the future. In fact, a question, my next point that I'm going to make is going to be relating to my draft strategy. So I too would go one of those elite running backs, but it's a very, very interesting argument, which was eye-opening to me because, I know a lot of people out there like, no, top 3 running back or you're an idiot. Well, no, because there's actually good merit here to the way that it actually could stat out to be profitable by going wide receiver and then, possibly higher-end running back. So it was just very interesting to me, but we got to move on. So who wants to go next?
I'll go next. Mine's pretty quick. So I was looking at this on an article I was looking at, and it was funny to me. Only drafting players that are tied to good or great quarterbacks. And I looked at that, and I had some thoughts behind that. Last year, some teams that really struggled at quarterback, and we all know these guys because we saw them, man. The Rams, Broncos, Jaguars, Texans. You got some good fantasy gold and players there that that were connected. Griffin, you can attest to this. You had Allen Robinson. He was greatly affected by the bad quarterback play that was there. I know some people probably had their stock in Demaryius Thomas or Emmanuel Sanders. They were definitely affected. Those that drafted Todd Gurley super early, he was greatly affected. And then you got the Texans, a guy that I believed it was Dre Hawkins, man. He was tremendously affected by that. Now going to this season, if you want to take that same approach, most of those teams are really in the same place. The Broncos, they still got the same quarterback things going on. They don't know what they're going to do there. Jaguars, if you believe Blake Bortles is going to be that guy, then you're probably not concerned. But if you're like me, you're still on the fence about it. You really want to see it. That's still the same place. Rams, they bring in a new head coach, offensive coordinator, so you really don't know what that's about. Is he legit? Can he overcome this? And then you got the Texans. They got the rookie Deshaun Watson there. A lot of people look at that as a plus. If you want to take them out, I'll throw another name out there. A team we just talked about earlier, the Bears. The Bears, they have a not good quarterback play. They got a kid that hasn't even played over 13 games in college, might be starting, and then you got Mike Glennon. So that when I saw that, I looked at that and I'm like, you know what, that can make a good point, a good argument, but I think still people are probably just gonna, if they like the player, they're still gonna draft him because that's their guy.
Well, look at finishes last year. Just a couple people who, a bunch of guys who finished as wide receiver 2s did not necessarily have elite, and definitely not elite fantasy quarterbacks. Rashard Matthews, he came in 14th. Tyreek Hill in 15th. Jarvis Landry, 16th. Demaryius Thomas finished 19th. Emmanuel Sanders, 21. Kelvin Benjamin finished 20. Cam Newton had a terrible year last year. Terrell Pryor finished at 18 in Cleveland. So, it shouldn't scare you off. It does probably cap your ceiling, but it shouldn't scare you off a player per se. It definitely, you have to maybe reel in your projections a little bit though. All right, Jason, you're up next, bud.
Yeah, I guess I'll go. Okay, so I was going to try to change how I worded this, but I'll just go ahead and do it the way I had it.
Go for it.
Basically, the argument is drafting elite tight ends or top level tight ends in the early mid rounds. I'm talking about like 5th round, 4th or 5th round. Now, there's a lot of people that will tell you that's ridiculous. You shouldn't do that. We have one of them as the host of the show here.
Hey-o.
Don't draft those tight ends until late. Well, here's why I say that's not necessarily a good strategy. The drop off at the tight end position is probably the most significant among all of the offensive positions. There was a difference of 50 points between the first tight end this year and the 12th. 50 points. You get a significant drop off, and in tight ends, that's rough because they don't score a ton of points anyway. So that can be very difficult, and then you're stuck the entire year trying to stream that position, which can be very volatile, very difficult to stream. Tight end scarcity is higher than pretty much most positions because there's teams out there that every single team throws to their wide receivers. Every single team hands to their running backs. Not every single team throws to their tight ends. So look at Arizona as a good example of that. High-powered offense, they don't throw to their tight end very often. So that actually brings the scarcity level of decent tight end options down quite a bit from pretty much every other position. So taking somebody like a Travis Kelce or Greg Olsen in those upper mid rounds may seem like you're pushing your other positions' depths down a bit, but it's also going to give you a starting position at tight end who's going to get you a decent amount of points every single week. And like I said, that's a starting position, whereas put someone on the bench, they may be doing just fine, but they're not doing anything for your score.
So your contrarian opinion here is that you should go higher on tight ends than people are mostly.
Yeah, most of what I've been seeing recently is a lot of people drafting tight ends later and later and later. And again, I understand the thought process, but my opinion is that you should draft those elite guys, those guys that you trust the most, higher. Now, once they're gone, yeah, you need to wait until you double digits rounds to start looking at those second tier guys because like I said, that is a significant drop off from your tight end top 4 tight ends to your middle 5, 6, 7, 8 guys.
That's true. Now, a lot of that basing it off last year's stats, you also have to remember last year was a horrifically bad year for the position as a whole.
Terrible.
I mean, there was about I think it was a 50-point drop-off from the number 1 tight end last year, or 2015 into last year, 2016, of 50 points. That's a pretty sizable margin for a position that scores, only 150 points on average a season at the top elite tier. So I get your thought process here about going early on tight end, and so in this sense, in the contrarian, you believe in this, you're buying it, you're playing into it. CJ, what are your thoughts here? Do you think that you should let the tight ends come to you? Do you think you should go grab a guy? Where's your stance in this argument?
I feel like it has to be based on your track record. Like when you go back and look at your draft history, you playing fantasy football these last couple of years. When you took the approach of, you know what, I'm not going to draft tight end, I'm going to wait for it to come to me, and you keep going round by round and then keep going later and later, and then you start seeing that tight end position and the talent that you're about to go pick up, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. So I can see that you're, valuing them a lot more going to this year because you've seen that that's been like the Achilles heel of your team. If you just been picking up, C level or third string level tight ends and putting them as your starters. So I can see Jason's point when you start to get into, middle of the rounds, if you got your guys that you already feel like you needed to get as far as, running backs or your wide receivers, and now you're starting to get to that, tight end position. You already filled out 2 of your running back spots, and now you're getting to, Now you get into your, I can't talk today. Your 2 running back spots, you filled out your 2 wide receivers, and now you get in the 5th, 6th round, and you see Travis Kelce there, or you see Jordan Reed there. You're starting to see high level guys that at the end of the year we're talking about consistently because they're producing, and you see them out there. You want to go get them. Now the consensus is probably going to tell you, hey, listen, those are guys you want to wait. Like Griffin, he's going to tell you to wait on those other positions you can be able to get. But if that's a guy that you believe in, you want to get because that's going to be points for you, by all means, go get him. Because look, there's nothing worse than you going against your strategy when you know that's a position when it comes to you that you've been sucking at for years because you keep overthinking something. Go get a guy that you can guarantee that's going to get you those points, and then you can fill the rest of your team out later so you're not worrying about this. If you're better at finding gold at the running back and the wide receiver position, be set on that you're going to go get that. But you suck at getting a tight end, go get a tight end that that's going to score for you.
Or maybe you just do more research at the tight end position, and then
You
you're
can
good
do
to
all
go.
the research you want to. You can just
How well did that work for most people last year?
Yeah.
It didn't work at all.
Last year was a dumpster fire for everybody, though.
Well, that wasn't the only year that the tight ends have been a dumpster fire.
I understand,
true.
but we saw the emergence of all these guys in 2015, and then just a lot of them did not repeat.
Ooh.
Now,
That was more of an outlier than what last year was, though.
Jason, you know what he's telling me? He's telling me he's believing a lot more in this tight end position this year because maybe the ascension of some other talent, maybe a O.J. Howard that he's secretly believing in.
No, I'm not even remotely into O.J. Howard. To your point, Rob Gronkowski, he's, as we talked about in our draft, he is still projecting upwards almost on a weekly basis. He's now going in the middle of the second round. So, yeah, you talk about drafting a tight end in the 5th, 6th round. Travis Kelce, he's currently going the 3rd round. If he's there, that's definitely intriguing. Jordan Reed, Greg Olsen, that's where they're going. Jimmy Graham, Tyler Eifert, those guys, that's their asking price. So that's not a good value to me. It's just one of those things where you have to watch it, and so that's I don't buy into this contrarian opinion because simply I would rather get depth at the volatile positions where I have to start multiple players at that position. You can't stream those positions. You can stream the tight end, and it's not the easiest tactic.
So you think the tight end position is less volatile than the other positions?
Nothing to do with volatile, but with injuries and being able to get starter quality guys, you only start one tight end. There's more of them available out there, where with the running backs, there's only so many starting running backs. And when those guys go down, you're not going to be able to pick up another one off the waiver wire unless there's a handcuff that's still available for some reason. Now, if you're getting to the point where everyone's drafted, 11 tight ends are off the board and you start seeing a secondary run go, yeah, sure, pull the trigger, get a guy, because you don't want to be left with a guy who you would project in like your late teens, early 20s at tight end. That would suck.
I got news for you. If you wait until 11 tight ends are off the board, you're going to get crap.
See, I disagree though, because after your top 12 tight ends currently, you have players available right now, and this is based on ADP. You can still get Jack Doyle, Julius Thomas. Your Cameron Brate will be there. Kobe Fleener, Eric Ebron, David Njoku, who is going to be the starter, and he's probably going to put up some decent weeks because they cut Gary Barnidge. Out of all the rookie tight ends, I'm actually highest on David Njoku because he has the best opportunity ahead of him. All guys that are available in that later tier of tight end, where players that are going ahead of them, players like Martellus Bennett as the 8th tight end off the board in an offense that doesn't use the tight end, Hunter Henry, who's in a timeshare, O.J. Howard, who's in a timeshare and a rookie. So, I mean, if they want to have those guys, that's just pushing guys to later in the drafts that I can reach for. And that's why I don't believe, and I'm not buying into that contrarian opinion, but that's where we differ. So let's move on because we're already basically out of time. My second and final opinion is, again, something that I believe, and it's contrarian because the masses don't do it. Now, I think most intelligent fantasy football players do this, and that is to wait on the quarterback. However, I might go a little bit too far I go super late on quarterback. And the reasoning behind it is simply position scarcity makes the demand for you to draft other players. If not, you're going to be missing out on depth of those positions because the discrepancies between, say, the quarterback 5 to 12 is not nearly as wide as, say, the discrepancy between the running backs 12 through 20. There is a massive difference between the cap that you have between those running backs, those wide receivers. The higher tier running backs and wide receivers, they help really increase the ceiling on your team, where the quarterbacks, not so much. Yeah, you get more consistency week to week, you get more comfort, but it's just so much easier for you to stream the quarterback position, play the matchups, and do all that stuff like that. And it allows you just to take more shots at the running back and the wide receiver, because if I grab a quarterback, that's just pushing down guys I could be grabbing for the flex, for the bench, for covering injuries, for covering bye weeks, all that stuff, higher tier guys, which have therefore a higher ceiling, at least they should. And the quarterback position, I don't know if you guys have noticed that it is incredibly deep. 2 quarterback leagues are becoming a very popular thing because there are over 24 quarterbacks who are very productive week to week, but you only start one, so it's very easy to stream. You can play the good matchups, and it gives yourself a very good chance of getting a quarterback 1 performance. In fact, do you guys know how many quarterbacks last year finished with a number 1 fantasy performance?
I do not know. Tell me.
Any guesses, CJ? Yeah, that's your best bet. So after all this,
I'm waiting for you to finish so I can do my rebuttal.
Okay, so all these stats I just gave, and I'm pointing out now the number of quarterbacks that finish as a number 1. There are 32 teams in the NFL. 38 quarterbacks put up a number 1 fantasy performance last season through all the weeks of the year. So How is that not a streamable position? Also, if you were to do 6 point per passing touchdown, which is our preferred method, or if I was to stretch this to a 14-team league, there was another 3 or 4 guys who did it. So we're talking over 40 quarterbacks who were able to go out, put up a week-winning performance. If you play the matchups, it's very easy to try and predict. You have a very good chance of getting a week-winning performance because only 12 quarterbacks are started in a 12-team league. That means that you've got all these other guys to pull from. Go ahead.
So here's the counter argument. First of all, no, it's not easy to pick those because it's extremely volatile. You never know who's going to have a good week and who's going to. Let me talk. You guys been talking for about 30 minutes.
I'm letting you
talk.
talk.
It's now my turn. So,
wow.
Good grace. You must be out of breath by now. Come on.
I'm not.
The quarterback position is a very important position. You make it seem like it's just a throwaway position, like a kicker or something. It's not. It is a very important position. You can get tons and tons of points with these guys. And 38 different quarterbacks finished in the top 12 week to week. That's fantastic. Some of those quarterbacks you don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. Yeah, they blew up and had a week, but then for the rest of the time, they're calling Kaepernick, who was sitting on the bench for most of the year. He had a number 1 overall performance in a week. I think it was week 10 or something like that.
He had multiple.
But he had one where he was number 1 overall. One.
Number 1, top number 1 overall. Sure.
I'm talking about finishing number 1 overall. But the point is, as much as you'd like to say, you can stream that position and you can guess the matchups and all that kind of stuff, it's not that simple. It's not that easy. I would rather have a quarterback that I can trust to keep in the lineup week to week. And as wonderfully streamable as you think the quarterback position is with 32 starting quarterbacks, there are a lot more starting wide receivers out there. There are a lot more starting tight ends out there. And I'd be more comfortable picking through my wide receivers and streaming that position because you talked about finishing number 1. Well, 12 quarterbacks, like I mentioned, 12 quarterbacks finished as the number 1 guy throughout the entire season. Through the 17 weeks of football, we had 12 guys finish as number 1 at the end of the year. Tight ends, there were 14. Running back, there were 14. Wide receivers, there were 16 different guys that finished as the number 1 guy. There was only one wide receiver that repeated as the number 1 overall guy, and was Brandon Cooks. He did it in the first week, and he did it in the 15th week. Okay, so the point is, as wonderfully streamable as you think the quarterbacks are, wide receivers are just as streamable. You had Adam Thielen at one point was the number 1 overall guy. Amari Cooper, Devontae Adams, Sammy Coates was the number 1 overall guy in a certain week. Marvin Jones was the number 1 overall guy. So it's easy to stream any position if you do a lot of research. Okay, but again, a lot of it is the luck factor. So while you can say, let's go ahead and pick a crap quarterback at the bottom of the draft in position 12, I would be much rather pick a quarterback that I trust that has to play for me week to week.
You said there were 16 different wide receivers that finish as a number 1 throughout the entire year.
Say again?
You said there were 16 wide receivers that finish as a number 1 throughout the entire year?
As the number 1. The number 1.
Well, yeah, because there's 16 weeks. All right, whatever. Go ahead, CJ.
Listen, here's
what are you talking about?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Hold on. Listen. Let me get in here a little bit. All right, just a little bit. Okay, here's the thing. Look, if you're a Griffin fan and you got the same mindset where you don't really believe in quarterbacks, that there's a plethora of options you can be able to go. I will agree with Griffin. You're absolutely right. There's other quarterbacks that position. If you want to go all in on running backs and you want to get better options for depth and all that stuff like that, do that thing. If you want to do the same thing for wide receiver, do it. Here's the thing. There's a couple guys that I like and I look at their schedule and then I see their track record, the people that I've drafted before, that I like a lot better than a lot of streaming options that might have one good week. And granted, that's all that you may need just to be able to win something. But for me, when it comes to not wide receivers, I'm talking, when it comes to quarterback, I like somebody that I believe in, that I want to run my team for the rest of the season. I normally get 2 guys. I might be scratching head for a lot of people, but I like to get 2 guys that I believe in. So there's no, the streaming thing, I don't think that is the one true thing that you can be able to do and you should be good. I don't think that's the correct all be all option. You could be able to go and you can be able to tell me that that's what you should go with. That's Griffin's strategy. Hey, Griffin, go for it. If that's your strategy, go for it. But for me, I get a guy that I believe in. I'll take the Jason's approach. I take a guy that I believe in. And when it comes to other options I will stream at, I'd rather stream at a tight end, a wide receiver, or a running back. But quarterback, I like to get my guy and leave it at that.
That's fair. That's the much more comfortable and easier thing to do. But to me, also, if that guy struggles, like, obviously, if a guy has a down year, his receivers get hurt, you're going to have a much harder time parting with a guy who you invested a 5th, 6th round pick in than a guy that you're just streaming. I'm usually dropping quarterbacks week to week, and that's the difference of strategy.
Sure. You can say that about any position. Again, you can say that about any position. I pick David Johnson number 1 overall, and he gets injured, and he's week to week with an injury. It's hard for me to put him on the bench. It's hard for me to maybe drop him if it gets to 6-7 weeks and he's done nothing. So you can say that about any position. And by the way, if I'm going to stream something, I would much rather stream off the bench. I would much rather go to my bench and have options there to stream with to stream. Oh, I don't like this guy dropping off the bench. Bring another guy into the bench. Okay, I'll keep him around. My starters, I'd rather not have to stream them. I would rather have a guy that, like I said, I trust. And then maybe he's coming up on a bad matchup. He's coming up on the number 1 overall defense that year, and I say, okay, now maybe I'll switch a different guy into his position. But overall, I want an Aaron Rodgers who I can count on every single week.
Aaron Rodgers is like that one exception to this rule where you're getting a guy who you can start basically no matter what.
Brady?
Drew Brees.
Brady there?
Brady has not always been an elite fantasy quarterback, though.
Recently, he is. I'm seeing Brady go in the freaking 2nd or 3rd round. That's how people loving him.
Guys, we are way over an hour, so we have to keep moving, but I just have one final question. So, Jason, for my own mental clarity, when you're talking about these guys who finish at number 1, you mean like literally the top number 1 overall player at the position,
God.
Right?
Yes.
Because I just didn't understand.
Number 1 guy.
Okay.
Not a number 1, the number 1.
There's the clarity. Well, that was my concern, because I was like, how is that possible? Because even like Greg Sales in week 2 finished as a number 1.
The number 1 guy.
Okay,
I kept going, huh?
I get it now. I didn't know, because I was talking about a completely different stat. I didn't get it. I got you now. Okay, I get your point. Though I think that's a little bit of a loophole. But let's keep moving. CJ, what's yours?
All right, moving on.
All right. Well, listen. Here's the thing that I go. So I've been seeing this a lot lately too. I was reading an article and I saw this little nugget thing here, and watching some TV shows. I mean, not TV shows, sports shows, man. So this fading injury optimism on players. Two guys that have been shoving down my throat when I'm watching stuff is Jamal Charles, with now playing with the Denver Broncos, and Sammy Watkins with the Buffalo Bills. Listen, guys. There's so many other players you can be able to look at. Look, don't stop being so desperate where you're trying to continue to talk up Jamal Charles. Yes, he was a heck of a player. He was a good player. Sammy Watkins, we never really seen how good he was because he's always been injured. But Jamal Charles, we've seen that. His injury track record is horrendous. Look, he's not that good enough where you're going to try to force yourself to go pick this guy high or keep banging the table with this dude, but just look at the writing on the wall. Jamal Charles, he's a gadget player now for the Denver Broncos. He's not going to be a starter. He's not going to be that guy that he used to be. Stop trying to make him that and let him be that dude and get him at a respectable rounds. Don't keep talking up this dude, and especially Sammy Watkins. I'm seeing Sammy Watkins going to 6th, 7th round. He needs to be going double digits, dude. Look,
wow.
maybe I'm a little disrespectful, but dude, how much longer are we going to keep going on with this thing with Sammy Watkins when he's been disappointing you year after year because he refuses, he's unable to stay on the field. So what is the point? Why are you keep projecting him higher when his health has him where he needs to be, and that is a double-digit round guy?
Sammy Watkins is currently going in the middle of the 4th round, just for clarity's sake.
Wow.
All right.
I kind of agree with what CJ's trying to say. The bottom line is this: don't become so in love with a player that you're willing to overlook the fact that they're horrible week to week or they're not available week to week. It's like you said with Jamal Charles. There's Jamal Charles truthers out there that just love him because we remember, and that's fantastic. But you know what? if he's hurt all the time, all you're doing is getting him as a nostalgia pick, and that's not going to do anything for your team. So I completely agree with that sentiment. You need to pick somebody that is not going to be hurt all the time that you can trust.
All right, and we are well over our time limit, so I'll just agree for the sake of moving on. Jason, your final one.
Yeah, you know what? The time limit thing, it's not a thing. You're just going to have to get over it. Last one is something I've been kind of living by the past couple of years, especially in the league that I'm in. And this is a guideline. It's definitely not a hard and fast rule. I've broken this guideline a couple of times myself. But the guideline that I've heard from other people and that I kind of subscribe to is do not trade your starters. Unless it is clearly in your favor, most players won't even look to trade unless they're trying to unload garbage on you. And I've seen that quite a bit in our league of record, people trying to unload garbage. Certain unnamed players will actually try to trade you an injured player that's on IR and things like that. That's just dirty. Just drop the player and get somebody else. Don't try to trade him. That's garbage. But if you're so desperate to lose a player, you'll probably get them on waiver wire anyway. Just keep your eyes open on it. And if it's too good to be true, it probably is. And of course, the be-all, end-all argument for this: DPA, don't trust anybody. They're trying to unload. They're trying to unload something on you. You need to go and double check every single stat. Look at the news coming out of that team. What is going on? Why is he trying to unload this particular player that you're like, oh, that's a great. Wait a minute. So don't trade the starters unless it is somebody that you think you can trust, and don't. Don't.
And this is why it's contrarian, because a lot of people say, if you're not trading, you're not trying. I like personally, and this is the difference between specifically Jason and I trade a lot. I'm trying to make moves every single week, and because I'm constantly trying to upgrade my team, move around injuries, move around bye weeks, whatever the case may be. If you're not trading, you're not trying. Now, it is true that people will try and pull fast ones, but that falls on you as the owner, as a person participating in the trade, to do your homework. You should not be accepting any trades before you go. You do your research, you check the websites, you make sure that this is upstanding, because there are people who are going to do that. I guarantee you. I'm sure everyone has a couple of those guys in their leagues. You've probably tried to do that from time to time, listener. So, that's just a part of fantasy football, and that's why they have the reject and the counter option, because you'd be like, haha, good one, here's what I'm actually going to accept. So I get it, but sometimes, look, if you lose players, and this is why I draft for depth, so I don't necessarily have to trade away my elite guys, because there's nothing I hate more than trading away my elite starters. But I mean, hey, if you really have positions of need and you have depth at a strong position, or if you've lost a lot of bench guys or a lot of players around your team and you need to replenish those spots, sometimes you have to do what you have to do, and that's case by case, week by week, and we answer questions about these trades every single week during the main season. So I get your contrarian thought process there, Jason, but cases are unique.
Like I said,
owners are
it's
unique.
not a hard and fast rule. It's not a hard and fast rule. It's just I don't trust anybody.
That's fair. CJ, anything?
Especially Griffin Palmer.
What? Why?
Wait, boy, man! This is a real episode. This is a real episode. He just
threw me under the bus for no reason.
Oh my goodness,
Jason, we've made good trades in the past, man. Oh, all right.
When have we traded anything in the past? I don't think we've ever had a trade.
Yes, we have in our Dynasty League.
This is so good. Listen,
I don't even remember it. That's how bad the trade was.
I got Des Bryant from you, and you got a whole bunch of players that you wanted.
Behind the curtain. Behind you.
Regardless, we are so far over the time limit. We have to get out of here.
Doesn't matter. Move on.
It does. CJ, do you have anything you want to add, or are we good?
Hey man, we're good, man. I can see both sides, but hey, just like you said, if you're not trading, you're not trying. If you ain't trying to cheat and get over on somebody, you ain't trying.
Oh wow.
Wow. Cheating is bad. I'm just gonna say that, and we'll get out of here.
Not. If it's in the bylaws, hey, that's not cheating.
But I also think that there's a difference between cheating and trying to necessarily pull a fast one, because that falls on the other owner to do their homework, like I said. But all right, we are out of here, and that's going to do it for us today. Please make sure you guys tune in on Tuesday, where we will be doing a mailbag episode. Now, this episode is going to be focused on league management questions. So we're calling out all the league owners out there, or individual team owners that have a sort of democratic system in their leagues, so that you can can partake in league decisions, which is how it should work. That's how all of our leagues work. We put things up to vote, and then everybody, if it has majority vote, the change passes. We don't want anyone to feel like they weren't given an opportunity to speak or have a say in the way the league goes. So if you have things that you want to see changed, debates on scoring, roster compositions, whatever the case may be, submit your questions. You can do it via YouTube by commenting down below underneath this video, or just if you're not listening, you go to YouTube, youtube.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. You can tweet your questions at us, or send us direct messages on Twitter at the FF Fanatics. You can send us messages on Facebook at facebook.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. Just like the page, and then you can submit your questions via the messenger, or you can submit your questions via email, thefantasyfootballfanatics@gmail.com. Remember, Patreon, that's a great place to get additional information. We're constantly, anyone who submits questions over there, we respond to like clockwork. You can visit the website for a lot of our information. And remember, subscribe. We're here every Tuesday and Friday. And if you want to join the Listener League, remember, all you have to do, go on iTunes, subscribe, give us a rating, give us a review, and you are in the running to play against us in fantasy football and make your case heard about, why you're better than we are, or put your money where your mouth is. So that's kind of half the fun. So again, iTunes, rating, review, that's all you have to do. And you can follow us also individually. I'm at GPalmerFFF, CJ is at CJ Hickman89, Jason is at Jason Cabrera 13. And with that, we're going to move into our post show, which is a YouTube exclusive. So if you want to hear us talk about some football topics, head over to YouTube, again, youtube.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. Today we're going to be talking about E3. So E3 obviously has been happening. We're going to talk about our hot takes, what we saw, what we liked, what impressed us, what we're excited about, all that kind of stuff. So any parting thoughts before you sign off, guys?
Hey, man, shout out to my man Alvin. He reached out to me on Twitter, man. He said he really enjoyed what we're doing, and he's a big fan of the show.
All right, nice shout out. All right, we're out of here, everyone. Take care. Have a great weekend. If we don't see you on the post show, we'll see you on Tuesday. Bye.
Life in the fast lane, moving at the speed of life, and I can't slow down. Only got a gallon in the gas tank, but I'm on the finish line, so I can't stop now. I don't really know where I'm headed, just enjoying the ride. Roll till I drop and ride till I die. I'm living life in the fast lane.